Okay, so next video is on Kingship and Macbeth. This one's going to look a little bit different. I'm actually going to structure this video a little bit differently, but just stay with me. So, Kingship, I want to start very quickly about talking about context because it is so relevant to this theme. So, of course, we want to speak about the divine right of kings. I'm not going to repeat what that means though. Divine right of kings. King James. Now, there was a lot of doubt around King James being on the throne amongst the English public. There was a divide because of religion between Catholics and Protestants. Now, James was Protestant and was persecuting Catholics. The people that were in charge of the gunpowder plot were Catholics. Actually, there's some conspiracy that Shakespeare was secretly Catholic, and actually that's why in this play he's actually putting forward not just a message to the audience, i.e. the general English public, but a message towards James as well, and that is what makes a good king. And he kind of uses different characters, different events in the play to pose this question, and beside it I'll just put what makes a tyrant as well, because of course he uses that contrast in the play to say what makes a good king. The other message that he puts out there, this one may be a little bit more related to the divine right of kings, that is that kingship is divinely appointed. Yeah, and it just cannot be stolen. If ever it is stolen, it will always go back to the rightful king. Yeah, so that's overall Shakespeare's message, overall context. I'm gonna go into looking at different characters. I'll actually put these in different colours as well. Different characters who explore these messages. So let's start with the first king. Let's start with King Duncan. Hopefully these show well. Okay, so Duncan. Thank you. Yeah, King Duncan. So Duncan is our benevolent king. He's a fair king. And by fair I mean that he does what at that time especially a king should do, which is to punish and to reward. We see him do both. I'm going to put anything smaller like quotes actually just in pen. So we see him do this when he says, go pronounce his death. His is he's talking about the Thane of Cawdor, and with his former title greet Macbeth. Okay, so in that one quote we see how he sentenced the former Thane of Cawdor to death and has rewarded Macbeth with that title. Duncan also is able and produces an heir to the throne, Malcolm. This shows that he's a stable king. There's political stability there. Another thing about Duncan is his death disrupts nature. which shows that he is linked to the divine. Yeah, linked to the divine. Don't know why I put a little quotation mark there. Not needed. Linked to the divine. You could say everyone loved Duncan, including Macbeth. Even Macbeth speaks about Duncan's virtues, and for a moment doesn't actually want to proceed because of the fact that Duncan is actually a good king. Okay. The criticism though about Duncan could be that he was too trusting, because you have the first Thane of Cawdor straight away. Thane of Cawdor, you've got the rebel army, which is not necessarily saying that he's too trusting, but the Thane of Cawdor goes against Duncan, and then obviously we know that Macbeth later on becomes the Thane of Cawdor and kills Duncan. So there's this idea that he's an amazing king, but actually he still has one quality that potentially caused his own death. Okay, so I'm going to leave Duncan alone now and move on to the next king that we see. Macbeth. Okay, Macbeth is he is known as a tyrant. He's known as a butcher. Okay, this is what other people say about Macbeth. As a king, he stole the throne. Okay, steals the throne and disrupts order by doing so. He's also, as a king, he's paranoid, and that's because of guilt, but also because he does not produce an heir. And we can see that not only makes him resent Banquo, but he feels quite insecure about the fact that he does not actually have an heir. Also, he is callous, he's quite rash. As a king, makes bad decisions, doesn't really seek counsel. He actually turns counsel means advice. He turns counsel down, so you could say he's quite an obnoxious king as well. His death serves as catharsis. Now, in a tragedy, in a Greek tragedy, but also in Shakespeare's tragedies, a catharsis is at the end of a play. It's at the end of a tragedy, more specifically, after we've felt all these overwhelming feelings of pity for the character or the characters, after we've potentially seen a lot of death and things like that, because catharsis at the end allows the audience to be cleansed of those emotions, usually with some kind of a resolved ending. So his death serves as that catharsis. It actually brings peace to obviously the characters in the play, but also I'll put peace to audience. Okay, so Macbeth absolutely is seen as a bad example of kingship. Okay, I am just going to now quickly speak about, I actually want to speak a little bit about Macduff. So Macduff does not ever become king. But he's really important to look at when it comes to kingship, because Macduff is he is like the perfect loyal statesman. Okay, the fact that he feels He's very patriotic. We can see this in his language. So when it comes to the death of Duncan, oh horror, horror, horror. He's the first one to see that Duncan has died. He's also the one that questions Macbeth as to why he killed the sleeping guards, and of course is the one that goes to England to bring Malcolm back. He also says, bleed, bleed, poor country. Okay, very patriotic, and he places nation over self, and we see this through the death of his family. Okay, he's also the hero, I guess you could say, of the play, because he's the one who brings justice by killing Macbeth and ending his tyrannical reign. I'm going to move forward now to let's move forward to Malcolm, and he is the one who at the end of the play becomes king. So Malcolm, he is the rightful heir. Okay, at the end, order is restored by him becoming king. Order is restored by him becoming king. He's also patriotic. He's in England trying to get an army together so that he could win Scotland back. He is less trusting than his father, and that could be seen when he tests Macduff's loyalty. Yeah, so he's less trusting. There's a quote that he says when he he actually says offer, not offering. Offering up a weak, poor, innocent lamb to appease an angry god. He's saying that he wasn't sure if he isn't sure if Macduff is just going to offer up Malcolm, who is the weak, poor, innocent lamb, to appease Macbeth, the angry god. There's some juxtaposition in that quote. The lamb being Malcolm, and then Macbeth being this angry god. You've also got a massive power imbalance there though, because you've got this angry god and then you've got this weak lamb. So that could potentially be Shakespeare hinting out a little bit of a weakness, although we do actually see Malcolm on the battlefield, which we don't see with Duncan. He's there with his subjects and he's there fighting for what's right, for justice, and for order to be restored as well. So we've got this very good candidate, I want to say, because we don't really see him rule for kingship. You've also got, just a little side note here, the King of England, King Edward. He is seen as this divine ruler. He has the power to heal his subjects. And he also gives Malcolm an army as well. Yeah, so we never see him on stage, but out of all of the kings, he's the only one where there is not a single flaw that could even be pointed out by him. Okay, so Shakespeare compares all these characters. He compares their qualities, he compares the way that they handle situations, he even compares their deaths, all to make a point about what makes a good king and what potentially could ruin a king as well. Things like paranoia can ruin a king. King James was actually quite a paranoid king, not just against Catholics but against witches or people that, you know, were said to be witches. He actually is the one who made, I'm actually going to add that in here, gunpowder pot and witchcraft. He wrote demonology. He also made it, he passed the law saying that witchcraft would be punishable by death. And of course we see Macbeth seeking the witches, which would be completely immoral in James's eyes. But the idea of him putting on these witch trials, King James putting on these witch trials, persecuting people that he thought were witches, being quite a paranoid king, these are actually things that we see a bit in Macbeth. So it's Shakespeare really putting forth this question, not only for people to look at King James and think, yeah, James is a good king, and actually we can't argue against who our king is because it was chosen by God, but then also this message to King James of, James, be a good king, because otherwise you'll end up having quite a bad ending. Alright, I'm going to leave this video there because that was actually a lot longer than I wanted it to be. I'll try and make the next ones a lot shorter. Sorry, the only thing that I had forgotten, but it is actually very important, so I'm going to add it on, is just about Banquo. So, of course, Banquo does not become king, but his son does. His heir, which Macbeth is missing, becomes king as per the prophecy. So his heir, Fleance, as per the prophecy, will become king. You've got also the in Act 4 Scene 1, the line of 8 kings. You've got the links to King James. Okay, Banquo in reality was in history. He actually killed Duncan with Macbeth. In this play, Banquo is presented in a positive light to flatter King James, because he was actually related to Banquo. And so was Fleance. Fleance was related to King James also. Okay, so you've just got it's been foretold by the witches to the audience that James will one day reign, and that's just to solidify his reign and to almost come back at any of the doubts about James and his reign. Sorry that this had to be added on, but yeah.